Welcome everyone to the third Thursday call of the Co-Creators Convergence. I'm Noelle Marshall. Oops, wait a second. It's February 21st, 2019.
It is.
I always forget that part. So I'm Noelle Marshall. I'm here with my beloved.
I'm Bob Warner.
And together we call ourselves Light Partners. So welcome everyone to our call this Thursday. It's been going on, and we have a special treat for you today.
Yeah.
Right. So Bob has been working with the sun. We have a lot of special treats. So, and we're going to tease you. So first, we're going to show you a promo video that's being done for this year's Convergence, which is Bob. Tell them about that.
June 12th through 16th at the ranch. It will be our 7th annual, and Talia and David and Noelle and I will all be there for the 7th time, and Kathy for the 6th time. And
Kate, I hope you're coming back.
Yeah, so we are looking forward to that. And so as Noelle said, we usually introduce, because there are other people that come on this call that haven't been on the Co-Creators monthly call before, we usually introduce it verbally, but tonight I am going to narrate the video that the AV department, media department at the ranch has been working on for the last couple of weeks. If I do the screen share properly, that is. So stand by. This is what the Co-Creators Convergence is about.
Okay, and start.
Here's Co-Creators Convergence is June 12th through 16th at the ranch. The Convergence is a heart-resonant, worldwide community of uniquely gifted souls, dedicated to embodying and amplifying our collective consciousness. Thereby co-creating a world that works for everyone. The Co-Creators Convergence is unique. It's not a seminar or a workshop. The Convergence is everyone is unique and equal gathering where participants are invited to bring an activity, process, or experience the entire circle that's focused on the theme of the year. We recognize the unlimited creativity of all and the expansive potential of that which we all can bring in respect and cooperation with nature and the higher oneness. An all-volunteer weavers group weaves together the offerings that everyone makes, and deep personal exploration, higher love, and outrageous craziness ensues. We do this all with great love, compassion, and joy, honoring all realms of creation to accelerate the awakening of humanity. Our commitment is to support the loving work of each attendee, and the relationships that are formed have become lifelong love affairs and life work for many. The beautiful Sunrise Ranch Spiritual and Intentional Community and Conference Center has been the home for the Convergence since 2013. Our annual Convergence at the ranch is the highlight of many people's entire year. Our participants enjoy the loving, peaceful support of the Sunrise Ranch community, the stunning Colorado foothills beauty, and garden-to-table, amazingly prepared food, perhaps harvested by some people on this call. So if you are drawn to be a part of this collective invitation to uplift the world and want to converge and co-create with kindred spirits, we welcome you to join us. The only prerequisites are an open heart and a willingness to explore. You are invited to join with others who feel the call to co-create in the field of consciousness to serve the highest expression of humanity. We have a website, a very active Facebook page, and monthly calls on the third Thursday of every month that are archived on our website. And special is when we sit in circle at the Sunrise Ranch this year on June 12th through 16th. So we'd love to have you join us.
Bravo.
And special thank you to the ranch for putting that video together.
So, thank you, Bob.
Sure.
And that was it was a little difficult to read part of that because the Zoom messages were over the print. So we couldn't read what was written there, the whole thing. So, little bit more polishing, but just a teeny. But we're very grateful for all the work the Sunrise staff has put into putting that together. So this is a double header for Sunrise Ranch, because we are so blessed to have with us David Karchere, the spiritual director of the Emissaries of Divine Light, and of course the Sunrise Ranch Spiritual Community and Conference Center. And also we have interviewing him tonight is Bexx Biehl. And I'm not going to Bexx Biehl spiel. So Bexx, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to mute myself, and I'm going to let you lead us in this wonderful gathering.
Wonderful. Thank you both, Bob and Noel, for having us on tonight. It's a pleasure knowing you and being neighbors with you, now being on here with you tonight. It's my absolute pleasure to be here with you all tonight and to be here with David. David is my friend, my spiritual teacher, and he's also an incredible author who's just published his first book, Becoming a Son, and there's more to that. It's Emotional and Spiritual Intelligence for a Happy, Fulfilling Life. Whoa, what a title. So before we get into that, I just want to first congratulate you, David, on publishing your book. Huge success for all of us.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, so, but before we get into that, I just want to say it's so exciting for me to be able to speak with you about this. I've been reading Becoming a Son, and you know, as a spiritual seeker, I've read so many books, and you know, it's hard to find a book that really speaks to you and gives you the tingles and gives you the feels. And this book does that for me, and to be able to sit here and talk with you tonight with all of our friends is just such a pleasure.
Thank you, Bexx. Thank you, thank you. So really happy to be doing this with you.
Wonderful. So you say in the introduction, I'm just going to get right into it, in the introduction of your book, that these words are your best attempt to represent the message you receive on the inside. And sometimes it's through words, and I know I'm not quoting exactly, but it's an inner pulse and a feeling. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. I imagine, like a lot of people, I feel the compulsion of some inner calling, and I feel it in my life, and it calls to me and gives me direction in the living of my life. It tells me to do stuff and talks to me. And yeah. Sometimes it feels like I'm receiving that direction. Sometimes it feels like I'm talking to myself. And the part of the introduction that you're referring to is me explaining that when I wrote the book, I decided to use a lot of the second person pronoun you, because that's how it is to me, that the voice that speaks to me just says, here's what you have to do, or here's what's up that you need to see and pay attention to. Right. So I use that same pronoun to share that experience with the reader.
Wonderful. So you can absolutely feel the energy in there. Bob and Noel start out these calls with a centering each time, and I'd asked you about possibly reading something or doing a meditation. Would you be able to do that for us with that same energy that you're speaking of?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I took you up on your suggestion that I read a poem or a reading from the book. It's called The Voice of Being. So the book is a book of poetry and prose. So I've been writing poetry for decades now. So this is I'd probably call it a poetic reading, and happens to be in the first person. I think Matthew Fox would call it an I am poem. An I am poem, because it speaks as a reality, an I am reality that's bigger than me as a individual human being. Mm-hmm. So that's just a little introduction to the poem, and it's entitled The Voice of Being. So without further ado, I'll read it. Just ask you to just be in the space of Just taking it in and just seeing where it goes for you. I am the voice of being, speaking in human hearts and minds. I am the living word, creative vibration, born in the highest heaven. I am the sacred presence, which lives at the heart of all creation. I have more faces than there are rocks in the desert or stones on the ocean beach. And before, I am born again with each baby who comes into the world, with each inspired thought, every longing for home, and I am present with each one as they leave. I am the voice of being, the sacred presence of the one who dwells. I call all people, all lands, all kingdoms to my spirit. I invite all hearts to melt, all consciousness to turn, to face me and know me as I am. I am heard by the innocent, by the open-hearted, by the one who is not too proud nor too humble to see my face. I'm heard by those who know that human effort, human belief, human feeling alone is futile, and that all understanding, all compassion, all power, and life itself abide in me. I am your voice, and the true voice of every man, every woman, of all human beings. Hear me, know me, embrace my spirit, your spirit now. Be me in human flesh. I am the voice of being, the sacred presence of the living God.
Thank you so much. Just wanted to sit in that for a moment. Thank you so much. So, to talk about the book a little bit, so you've already touched on that it's a mix of poetry, stories, teachings, some prose in there. How did this come about? How did you think up this brilliant, multi-experiential journey in a book?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. And before I launch in, I'll just mention that someday we ought to interview Bex because she's a pretty amazing person. But anyway, because it's my turn. So yeah, so where did the book come from? You know, it's interesting. I was thinking of the word convergence earlier today, not really associating it with this call, at least not consciously. And probably like a lot of creations, the book is a convergence of all kinds of influences and sources. So where does it come from? It comes from a lifetime of experience and a lifetime of learning on my part. So things I've learned over my life thus far. Some of those things are very experiential, and some you might say are more philosophical, just an understanding of how things work and the pattern of creation itself. So some of that is, I guess I would describe as spiritual in nature, a spiritual understanding or spiritual awareness, spiritual knowing. And then some goes into the realm of emotional intelligence and an understanding of my own human heart, and then an understanding of the hearts of others. And I've done some serious emotional process work along the way with Cliff Berry and his shadow work seminars, and that was quite an influence. And so the subtitle of the book is Emotional and Spiritual Intelligence for a Happy, Fulfilling Life. And I came to understand that emotional intelligence is far more than what you read in psychology today or from many consultants. It's been cheapened, I think, in many cases to how you can manage better or lead better, or how you can sell more, or how you can find a life partner, use some emotional intelligence. And yeah, it's relevant to all those situations, but so much more. And at the very heart of emotional intelligence is our knowing of the very source of our own life and wisdom and the source of our own love, and having an intimate, full-on heart connection with that. And then that spills over into all the other dimensions of our life. So I've come to understand that that's what emotional intelligence is about. But then there is an exploration of all the human experiences that we have at an emotional level. And instead of running away from those experiences, I think it really helps to go consciously into them, to understand them, realize that they're just feelings after all, and to come to a place of mastery in terms of your own emotional realm. And then what I came to realize is that the opening at that level opens up spiritual doors, that there's something very, very closely correlated between the gateways of the heart and the gateways of the spirit. And that I see people try to do something spiritual, but without paying attention to what's happening in the emotional body. And it's very difficult to make a whole lot of progress if you don't pay attention to emotional intelligence. So that all went into it. I became fascinated with the creative process and just the progression of how things unfold in human development. And then I'd been studying that, and then I ran into Cliff and his own study of the creative process, which really came, close to mine, to my understanding. And I spent a year on 7 different days with Cliff and a group of people doing work around that, exploring the creative process. So that was seminal to the book, really. And the book is in 7 chapters, large sections of the book, which goes to my understanding of how the creative process works, that it unfolds in 7 stages, really, repeatedly over and over again in our life. So that was a big part of it, the work I did with Cliff. And as a matter of fact, originally I was going to write the book. I started to write it with Cliff, and then that wasn't really working for me. And I decided I needed to write a book that was more heart connected than what I'd done. And so I decided to write a book of poetry as well as prose, because the most important things in life are understood poetically. They're understood at that level, the mythopoetic level of our life. The really important things are known there. So I'm really happy that I made that choice.
We're happy you made that choice too.
Oh.
Thank you. So as you're saying that, it made me think about the part in the beginning of the book where you're talking about, I wrote this down, let me make sure I have this right. This book is designed to be an operator's guide to the evolution of human consciousness. Is that what you're speaking to? Is this emotional and spiritual intelligence?
Yes. Well, I don't know how many people online here read the book by Alan Watts. It was really influential for me, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone. But in the introduction to that, what he says is that I guess in Oriental cultures, or in some cultures, they give upon marriage a pillow book, and it's a book that to inform the young couple the things of the bedroom. And he said, we need such a book about life for people entering life. There's no book that tells you how this all goes. So this was the book. That's why I entitled it The Book.
Right.
And so when I call it the operator's guide, what I believe is an experience, which as far as I know, we all experience, it is that we operate our life through an emotional lens, whether we like to admit it or not. And the way we see things is all through that emotional lens. And you might say, what a goofy way to set up a human life, because we've got to navigate our life through that lens. But apparently that's how we're made. And then once you realize that it is how we're made, and that it's possible to have some mastery in your emotional experience, it's all fun and exciting and works great. And you're not constantly being undone by your own emotional reactions to life and your own addictions.
After migraine days, take Catherine. Do not use if you're allergic to Emgality or its ingredients.
All right, would everyone please mute themselves? Have someone just joined the call, and I need you to mute yourself.
Right here. Got it.
Okay, she's muted now. Sorry for the interruption.
Go ahead.
Cynthia, you may want to adjust your camera and put you on mute. So, David, can you continue? I'm sorry for the interruption. Okay, yeah, it will be best, Cynthia, if you put your camera on, if you turn your camera off. I'm going to stop video. Okay, there we go. I'm sorry.
Lost David.
We lost David?
Oh my.
I don't know where he went. I don't see him.
His video was a little bit fuzzy to us, but I didn't know whether it was our line or whether it was at his end.
He's jumping out and coming back in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so there's also one other person, Diana DeWinton. I don't know if you're muted. I can't mute you. Can't see that, but I had him in speaker mode. So I'm sorry for the interruption. This is really a nice turnout. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. And thanks, Beck, for stretching herself and taking this on.
And thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Good.
Awesome.
Good. Well, I'm sure he'll be back in a moment. Let's put this back in other mode.
Okay.
Just so, oops.
Not minimize when you were recording. There he is.
Oh, I'm back.
All righty.
There you go.
Came back.
David, what happened to him?
That was brief.
Yeah, his was showing up as red, but
The signal?
yeah, the signal was. So was ours. But there he is. He's back. And I'm just going to ask everyone to mute themselves so we can continue this wonderful conversation.
Well, I believe I was going on about how we live our life through an emotional lens. And, you know,
Exactly.
like we're sitting behind the wheel of the car, if you will, but the windshield is emotional. And where that emotional body is clear, it's very powerful because we're acting with the power of the heart in our life. But where it's not clear, the creative impulse that's coming out through us isn't coming out clear, and we're not connecting well with others. We're not seeing accurately what's present, and we're not navigating our life well. And in fact, we're not even navigating our own humanity well. So that's why I called it an operator's guide.
I love it. I think it's accurate too. Thanks for remembering where you were. So my next question is about, more with the mixing of the stories and the poetry and the consciousness teachings. What was that like for you to consciously weave it all together? Because it kind of feels like those would be like separate little pieces, and to bring it together really gives the reader a chance to touch into all these different parts of you.
Yeah. Thanks for asking that. So in a way, the poetry was the easiest part because I've been writing poetry and I had a bunch of poetry, and I forgot which poems I wrote just for the book and which were already written. So that was easy, really. I had a writing coach, and she advised me to tell personal stories from my own life. She said, that would bring the message across to people much more vividly than just the theory. So that's good advice. And, I think like a lot of people, when I thought about, well, what stories do I have about my life that anybody would care about? So I think that's what we think when we originally think about telling the stories of our life to other people. But then you start telling them, and you realize what fantastic things you've experienced, and we all have, And so it was really something to access all that, and then, I must admit, sometimes I went to friends who knew me and knew something of my life, and I knew the chapter I wanted to write, and I asked them, well, what happened in my life that you know about that I could talk about here? So anyway, it took a while to write, but it was also like profoundly moving, because I tend to write, I don't know. Now, it takes a while for me to write, I'll put it that way. So it's a hard experience in the writing of it, because there's a transmission that's both a heart transmission and also a spiritual transmission that is coming through me as I write. And so that's thrilling. It truly is thrilling. And it is work, if you will. So you got to sit down and discipline yourself to the process. And then it was a delight to just have it come through.
Right. So my next question was going to be, what was the hardest part? And you just described that. Sort of like speaking sometimes too, when you want to share something, it kind of conflicts with what's coming through. So question for you then, can you tell us briefly about the 7 experiences that you cover in the book?
Yeah, I can. So Cliff Berry told me something that it really stayed with me. He said that a truly useful understanding of how life works has to include both space and time, which is an interesting thought. In other words, there's the design of how things are laid out in space, like how they fit together. So how you fit together as a human being, how we all fit together as human beings, and how a configuration of us as human beings fit together, and how we fit together in the whole pattern of life on the planet. So that's in space. And that goes to many dimensions, including emotionally, spiritually, mentally. But then the time model, or the time understanding, is how they unfold. Like how things unfold in the creative process over time, how process works. And to be masterful in life, we have to be masterful of both time and space. Mm-hmm. So the 7 chapters in the book cover, as I was saying before, 7 stages of the creative process. But each of those stages is an initiation into a human experience. So the first stage is blessing. So that'd be the easiest to cover. And blessing I describe as the highest love touching the heart. So it's when the spiritual, and the essence of the spiritual, which is love, the pure essence of love touches the heart, either inside oneself or between 2 people. And when that really happens, it's just amazing. And we're initiated into that experience as human beings. First of all, when we're in our mother's womb, and then when we're held by mother and father, that embrace, and even nursing, all of that is just an outpouring of love of this high love into that little heart of the baby. And so we're being initiated into that experience of blessing. It's a very core experience for us that we could describe as the primal bond. We're just bonding with parents, but then we're learning the bond that we're going to have in any relationship that means anything. And we're learning how to receive love, but we're also learning how to give it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reciprocity is in giving back. And so we're learning something about relationship that we're going to repeat. And, when we form a friendship with other children, we're going to repeat that learning when we have our first romance. We're going to, and then when we perhaps find a life partner, we're going to repeat the same learning when we have a profession or go into business. And at the core of that relationship isn't the contract or isn't money, but at the core, there's a heart connection that is the bond that allows that creative relationship to work. So all of us here who are sharing this call together, whatever else is happening, we may be learning something, or we may be sharing something at some other level, sharing some understanding amongst ourselves. But what's really holding us together underneath that, the primal experience, is of connection. And ultimately, that's a matter of the heart. There are other code words for blessings, such as tenderness. That's the word the Pope has used. Or the Dalai Lama talks about kindness. Or there's a group called the Care First movement. So care is another word. So if you really felt on this call that I didn't care about the other people on the call, or you didn't care about each other, or Bob and Noel didn't care about anybody on the call, we'd probably all just hang up or something, or wouldn't come back next time. There's a primal bond that holds us together and actually creates oneness amongst us. Without that primal bond, there can't be oneness, really, because it is that bond that's holding us together, and it moves through the heart. So that's the first initiation. And the way I think about it is the experiences that we're initiated into grow us, but then as we move into life, we're not just experiencing something that's happening to us that we're being initiated into. It becomes a strength and a virtue that we can consciously repeat in our life, or we can consciously offer. Like we consciously invoke blessing, consciously invoke a care and a love for other people, and then we consciously invoke an openness to receive love to our own heart, which is key to self-love and key really to a relationship with the divine. Because if we can't receive at a heart level the love of the divine, we're going to walk around feeling void.
Right. What are you sharing from if you're not receiving the love from the divine? So you're talking about these 7 experiences, and in the book you talk about primal spirituality. Now I know you also have a workshop series called Primal Spirituality. Can you say just a little bit about that for us?
Yeah. The workshop series is actually based on the book and the principles in the book. Mm-hmm. And I describe primal spirituality. Well, primal just means first. It doesn't mean primitive as we usually think of it. It's simply our primal spirituality, our first spirituality. It's the spirituality we were born with. Mm-hmm. I believe we're all born spiritual. And before we ever went to Sunday school or catechism or attended a church service or meditated or did yoga, before we did any of those things, we were spiritual. We were just born that way. And I defy anybody to hold a little baby and look at that little baby and think it's not spiritual. I mean, you just look at that little baby and it's like heaven is just oozing out of them. Yeah. So a spiritual path can help us to deepen our spirituality. And then as we mature, it can help us to strengthen our expression of it and our knowing of it, and our knowing of wisdom in our adulthood. But it can't make us spiritual. We're all intrinsically that already. So as I see it, our primal spirituality is our first spirituality, and it's also the spirituality that is behind all the world's great faiths and all the world's great religions and spiritual practices. That the Buddha wasn't, first of all, trying to start a religion. He had an encounter with his own primal spirituality. He had an experience, apparently a really profound experience. And then he looked to share that experience. But I think we do have to remember, for all of us involved in any religious or spiritual practice or tradition, we have to remember the point of the practice and the point of the tradition is not the tradition itself. It is that primal experience that the founder of the practice had, that they were trying to share, and that we could have for ourselves. I think that's the whole point, is to have that primal experience. So primal spirituality is about assisting people to reconnect with that primal experience, and then allow it to be not just a passing thing or a workshop high, but allow it to be something that they can have persist and grow in their experience. So that's what it's really what the Primal Spirituality series is about. And so we do kind of honor the subtitle of the book in that we open up both emotional and spiritual gateways. So there is, I think of it as emotional process light for people. It's not, we don't have, major cataclysms that we're precipitating in people's experience, so that they can, know something emotionally. But we do give people a chance to explore the emotional dynamics in their own life and to open up those gateways of the heart that allow something spiritual to open up and download into their experience. And then we have exercises that we invite people into, but then also some teaching around, well, how do you do this in your life day to day?
Right. So I actually have taken these courses, because you were there. I've taken them twice, the round of them now twice. And I love that this comes from the Becoming a Son teaching, because the facilitators all feel like sons in the room. So when you're saying you're not sure, I've taken it, and I do feel like there's just this energetic presence that is being held for each person to really dive in and discover the truth of themselves. And so that's what you're doing here in this book. And then you have this workshop series, and then you also have Becoming a Son workshop, and that's coming up soon, right?
Yeah, it is. The workshop is based on the book as well. So the Primal Spirituality series is a series of essentially 4 workshops of 4 days, although we shortened the last one to 2 days, and we're breaking up some of them. So it's a longer kind of treatment of the subjects in the book. Okay. The Becoming a Son workshop was done first. It's more tightly tied to the book.
Gotcha.
So it's very tightly tied to the book, and it goes through some of the chapters of the book and some of the teachings directly from the book. And it's 4 days, so it's shorter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Both. I haven't taken Becoming a Son yet, and I'm so excited to. Anybody who's thinking about it, come join us. So we're getting close to end of time. I do have a couple things I want to ask you about. One of them is attunement is mentioned in the book. So first I want to ask you quickly if you could tell the co-creators here online just a little bit about attunement and what we believe around that.
Yeah, sure. So, the word attunement is used these days somewhat prolifically in spiritual circles. We first began to use the word at Sunrise Ranch in the early 50s, late 40s, early 50s. And it means exactly what the word sounds like it means. So it means to attune to our inner source of wisdom and light and love and life, of the energy, the life energy that powers us. So it's about that. And there are many factors involved in attuning, as you know, probably anybody on the call here would vouch for. So to tune, there's what happens in our thoughts, our meditations. So attunement is certainly a thought practice and a meditative practice. It is a matter of the heart. It's pretty hard to find a deep attunement if your heart is all disturbed. So there's a peacefulness in the heart through which attunement happens, and the open doorways of the heart open up the spiritual doorways that allow a deep attunement. So it's a mindfulness practice for every day and every moment, really, to be mindful on the inside of how we're attuning spiritually, even while we're active on the outside going through our days. So there's an art to that, to being still on the inside and self-aware on the inside while we're being active on the outside, so that we're staying centered and attuned and deepening our attunement. And then we're generating spiritually in the course of our days. So attunement is that. It's also an energy medicine practice. So it's a practice like Reiki or Jo Rei or Tsukio Mahakari that uses life energy through the hands. In this case, with attunement, we work directly with the endocrine glands. So the endocrine glands are spiritual gateways. They're 7 primary glands or sets of glands. Some of them are quite familiar, the pineal and pituitary and the thyroid gland. And there's the other endocrine glands, which are ductless glands in the body. And then those ductless glands are incredible tuning instruments for spiritual current. So when we tune spiritually, there's an energizing and a healing of the human experience at all levels, at the emotional and mental level, as well as the spiritual and physical level.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing and explaining that. So the attunement process that you're talking about, so, excuse me while I calculate here. Okay, so in the book, you're providing kind of a blueprint and a guide to help people navigate their way through evolution in reality. And this attunement that you're talking about, it's available to all of us. It's coming from being a son, because we were all born a son and we're remembering that we are. So you created something to help to help people stay in attunement. And that's these incredible attunement cards you've been working on.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about this?
Yeah. So this goes back to that word convergence. So for us here at Sunrise and people other places and emissaries of divine light, we've been doing some serious study of emotional intelligence and emotional process, and to gain some real emotional intelligence for ourselves and in our teaching of others. And I will say, got totally into it about how the things of the heart really work for us as human beings. So we were working on that, and then I would call it a legacy understanding that we are carrying of attunement and spiritual intelligence. And we didn't quite see how the two things met, but interestingly enough, they were in patterns of 7. So my book, Becoming a Son, is a pattern of 7. And they're the 7 pieces of emotional intelligence that are key to the 7 chapters of the book. And then, there are the 7 endocrine glands, and then there are the gateways in each of the glands. And at some point about 2 years or so, it was like, I don't know whether to call it an aha moment or a duh moment, but we saw how they're totally correlated. And that was like revolutionary, because if you think of it this way, what if you had an understanding of the emotional intelligence and the practices of the heart that open up spiritual gateways that have relevance to activating the endocrine glands, and therefore, for real in life, activating the whole human experience and lighting it all up? And what if you had an energy medicine practice that supported the mindfulness and the emotional intelligence that you've been working with, and the mental practice through the energy medicine through the hands? And so it like all came together, and we were beginning to understand more deeply through our education how people become spiritually activated in an educational environment. And then the last piece of all that converged all together was, well, it began this way. We had committed ourselves to teaching attunement in our Primal Spirituality courses. Mm-hmm. And so I was looking for a way to do it. And quite honestly, I forgot how it happened. But I came upon the idea of writing a set of prayers and meditations that would introduce attunement in a spiritual context, and then through the prayer, use the words of the prayer as breadcrumbs to guide a person through the process of spiritual activation and opening up the spiritual gateway that particular prayer was about. So what ended up happening was that I wrote a set of 49 attunement cards, 7 for each of the 7 endocrine glands. So those are now written, and I'm working on creating an actual deck of cards, like tarot cards or oracle cards, something like that. So an actual deck of cards. But then also I've been reading them to music, and I have friends who are high-end music composers, very successful in their fields, who donated music for me to read the prayers to. So I'm recording a set of the cards to music this year.
Wonderful.
That's happening too.
So that's being recorded this year, and when do we think we may be able to get our hands on the print version?
That's another this year thing too.
Awesome. Cool.
That's the goal.
Wonderful. So I did ask if you would be willing to read us one of these incredible attunement cards.
Yeah,
Could you
I can. Yeah, I'll do that. I'm not going to read it to music just because that might be technically challenging. Sure. But I'll read I won't read the meditation. I'll just read the prayer from one of these cards. And I'm going to read one that relates to the thyroid gland. And we've named the spiritual essence of each of the glands. And the spiritual essence that we've named for the thyroid is the spirit of life. And I said there are 7 cards for each of the glands, and they're in 7 spheres of human experience. This is card number 32, and it's in the sphere of people who are our followers, dependents, and staff. So there are other cards, like there's for our friends, colleagues, and partners, for our ancestors and leaders, in the sphere of the very source of life itself, or addressing the divine. Mm-hmm. And then there's a sphere which is our relationship to the world at large, a sphere which is our relationship with friends or family and organization and community, and one that's in the sphere of teaching, healing, and ritual space and artistry. Anyway, That's just to give you a sense of the different spheres. This sphere is followers, dependents, and staff. So here it is, the spirit of life in the thyroid in this sphere. So here we go. I pray that you embrace life. When confronted with people who put you down, embrace life. Embrace your life, the surging power inside you, and the life path before you. When you are ignored by others and the world is passing you by, live. Feel the joy that is in your blood and in your bones. That original joy that was built in before you were born and which keeps flowing even now. Let it rip. On a beautiful spring morning, when everything is bursting with color and your heart is overflowing, enjoy the ride. Choose the spirit of life in all things. No one can do that for you, and nothing gets better if you shut it down. So no matter what happens, no matter what you are feeling, ask yourself the most essential of all questions. How do I let this power inside me out in the most creative way possible now? Dance, sing. Don't wait. Do it now. Skip and laugh your way through life. The creative power in you is the same power that makes the sun shine and the earth turn. It is the power of all living things, giving birth to nebulas and stars. It has been operating successfully for eons, and it didn't stop today. Nothing blocks it, nothing, but you could stop it working through you if you got all negative. Don't. What does that power want to create through you now? Open your mind to it. Think big and invest that big thinking into all the little things you say and do. The spirit of life in you is a glorious thing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The spirit of life in you is a pretty glorious thing too. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, thank you.
So we're going to open it up to questions here in just a moment. One last question for you, Mr. Karchere. If there is one single concept from this book, from the workshops, from this attunement card project, from this whole sphere that you're working in right now, if there's one concept that you would want someone to take away today from this call to enhance their life, what is it?
Wow. Let's see. It is that well, there's a saying that we have at Sunrise Ranch, and it comes back from our founder, Lloyd Arthur Meeker. It dates back to him. And he said this, he said, according to your response, so is it established unto you. So our response to the evolutionary urge in us is everything. And the deeper our response, the more we give ourselves to that urge within us to evolve, to become, to express, to create, the more we give ourselves to that wholeheartedly and openly, the more our destiny is opening up before us, the more we're called into life, the life that we're meant to know, the more we become a son, which I believe is the destiny of all of us. And we're already a son on the inside, and it's our destiny to become that on the outside. And all it takes is really our response to that urge that's within us all, within every single person. And we got to find out if there's ways we've turned it off, and if so, turn it back on.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
You know, I wonder, Bex, I could share the Amazon page. I can manage this, which I hope I
That
can.
would be wonderful. I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, where it all is.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just see if I can share it. Oh, here it is.
You're brilliant. Thank you.
So can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the ebook, and you'll notice the ebook right now is free. So I don't know how much longer it's going to stay free, but it is free right now. The soft cover will be up in a week or two, so that will be available for people to order from Amazon. But right now, if somebody wants to get the ebook, it's free, and there it is.
Awesome. Can't wait to get the paperback version too. You said that'll be up in a couple weeks?
Yep, something like
Same
that.
place? Just go back here?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, if people look up my name, you can find it that way.
Wonderful. And he's the only David Karchere, so it's easy to find him. Awesome. Thank you so much. So just want to open it up. If anybody has any questions to ask David, here he is.
So I usually have lots of questions and comments, and that's why I don't go first. So if you want to say something, whether it's a comment, question, just give us a hi sign and we'll unmute you. And Kate, is that you? Kate Roberts, did you?
Well, you know, that was actually just turning off the light here. I could just say bravo. Thank you, David, for such beautiful words of, you know, we all know that self-mastery and that emotional self-reliance go hand in hand. And, you know, thank you for bringing this awareness and helping us find that emotional intelligence. And as we do it together and leverage one another's thoughts, who knows? It's just thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Kate.
As co-creators Convergence, I can
you.
attest to it being one of the most, it's just beneficial for everyone. It's such a real moment. Everyone is so authentic, and you just experience the skills and greatness of so many converging together and don't know what you're going to experience. I found it a miraculous experience. Very fun.
And thank you for that testimonial, Kate. Very good. Does anyone else have something they'd like to contribute or comment? I can't. Okay, there are a couple people on the phone. I'm going to unmute 970 and also area code 847. If either one of you have a question for David. Okay, so. Okay, area code 847. You want to identify who you are and comment?
Hi, this is Flo, and I'm sorry I was a little bit late coming in, but I enjoyed hearing what I heard, and I don't really have any comments at this time, but it's good to hear you all.
Thank you for joining us, Flo.
Thanks, Flo.
Another one of our
Thank you,
convergencers, CCCers. Okay, I'm giving everybody fair warning now. Anyone else have a question or comment?
And I have a question.
All right, Bob, go ahead. You go first.
David, how I know this has been an amazing process for you, and we've witnessed this going on for the book and the coursework and your journey for a number of years. How would you say this experience, bringing this to life, has changed you?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Bob. So one thing I think it's done is answered life's question, do you really mean it? I actually finished writing the book, at least mostly, probably two and a half years ago, something like that. And there's been some editing, but there's just, it is my first book, and a lot of things to get over and to get through the process. Mm-hmm. And so it's like life is saying, do you really mean it? And in the process of answering that question, saying, yeah, I really mean it. I'm really going to get this book out. This message, I believe, is really important for the world. There's some kind of like a deeper resolution in myself and a deeper willingness to go public and bring what I have to bring to the world. And I'm just so, at this point, wildly enthusiastic about that. I just know that there's something that I'm bringing and bringing with friends that the world needs. Much like what you said about the co-creators convergence, you know.
Oops, did we lose them?
The screen froze here. I don't know if it has for you, Bex.
No.
His froze, but I see you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really appreciate it if David can still hear us. I really appreciate that. Do you really mean it? And bringing it to voice. That is, in fact, the theme for this year's Co-Creators Convergence.
True.
We've been out in the galactic, and we've been, in connection with connecting with Mother Earth and co-creating with Mother Earth in the heart. And this year, the theme centers around the throat chakra and bringing one's life's work to voice. So I really appreciate what you're saying, David. It's a great prelude to what our theme is for this year's convergence.
Very good. Okay, Jane.
Hi, Jane.
Jane, welcome.
Thank you, Noel. So, David, I appreciate the seven different cycles, seven different spirits. Can you give some insight to how a person can see what might be where they are in a cycle, what might be called for, where there is some evolutionary urge that's present that they could identify as a tool that's right in front of them, or a way to call in that energy so that they could move something forward?
Well, I don't know, Jane. So it seems to me that every step in our life, it is a little different. I'm hoping you can still hear me here.
We can.
But anyway, at every step in our life, it is a little different. I think, generally speaking, it pays to kind of watch and listen. So be willing to be with whatever's happening and pay attention to what's happening. And I think curiosity helps a lot. Like, be curious about what's happening and don't judge yourself or the circumstance. So if you can be there with it and be in it without flinching and without withdrawing or being overcome by shame or fear, if you can just be there, you can begin to sort out what's going on, and then ultimately have the courage to live your life and be there with what's happening. And when we have the courage to truly live our life and live it in a fully embodied and expressed way, then we gain the intelligence around what's happening, and we get to find out what's happening through our curiosity and through our exploration. So generally speaking, I would say it's that, and then it's having the faith that our life is taking us to grace. It's a path to grace. Our life is, and when you know that that's what your life is, everything's, all the adventure of it is okay. I'm up for this. It's part of my path to grace. Part of me being in grace is being with what's happening with gratitude and appreciation and forgiveness. And then I can be there with mastery, and I can be there creatively, and I'm all set up to create with others, to be in a co-creators convergence.
Very good. Jane, you want to follow on? Go ahead.
I do. So it's not necessarily a mental analysis of where you're at. It's being present where you're at and being open to what grace might bring into it.
Well, yes, but the curiosity is part of, I think, a thoughtfulness, and being thoughtful. I do believe we're here to live a thoughtful life, to notice what's happening and to understand what's happening. And there is a mystery to life, but some of the things we think have to be a mystery don't have to be a mystery.
Amen on that.
Sure.
All right. Any other? David, I think I saw you had your hand up. David Powell.
Yes. Hi, David.
Hi, David.
So we're part of the co-creators convergence this year is going to be some shadow work. And I was wondering, you mentioned shadow work. Can you just speak a little bit about how that shadow work has boosted your connection with yourself?
Yeah. So, so if we think of some of the darkest shadows of our human experience, there is a strategy around those shadows that is an avoidance strategy. And there's a time to just stay away from them, if you will, or just not go into them, or just express, just shine the light. That's a spiritual answer to shadow work, or it can be. But there comes a time when we realize, instead of running away from those shadows, we need to step into them in a safe situation so we can understand them and be masterful in them. And in so doing, what we get to find out is that behind all human emotion is one thing, and it's love. And if you're okay with the use of the word, behind all human shadows is God. And how do we know? It's because God makes all things, and there's nothing else to make things with other than love. So, but we don't, without actually facing those shadows and you might say taking them apart and how they're composed in our own human experience, we tend not to truly know that all the way through. And we tend to have some kind of avoidance, and then behind the avoidance, fear of that pattern in ourselves. And that can lead to walking a pathway through our life that it's the safe path around the shadows. But that means that there's large expanses of our life that we're just avoiding, that we should be masterful in. And it also means we don't help other people that well with the things they're dealing with. So if we're doing shadow work, it means we're stepping in to be masterful, to take the thing apart and to find the highest love that's at the root of all shadows. But it certainly doesn't look that way, as we first go into it. So that to me is the benefit. And then, there's the process. So I have seen people really mess up emotional process. So I've gotten, I'm very fierce about, any process I would be part of, either as a facilitator or as a participant, because I think, going into your shadow can go horribly wrong for people. So it has to be done in a way where you're going through it in victory. We're not going through to get eaten by the shadow, or to just go to go into some kind of re-injuring, which can happen. So I do believe there's a mastery about it all. And anyway, that's been really important to us here is that kind of mastery. So we're not re-injuring people or leaving people lost in shadow states.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to fix them.
Yeah, well, that's another one.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we talked to Keahi. She said she's been doing some facilitator training on shadow work. And so we're going to try to draft her for some of our processes. Right, Keahi? All right. Great.
Hello.
Okay, Dorian, you have the floor, or the chest.
Just a quick question. I believe that I recall from reading it, one of the chapters in your book, David, has to do with courage. And I was just thinking that, even writing a book like this, getting it published, is sort of like leaping off a cliff. Would you like to speak at all of the matter of the courage that it took to do this?
Yeah. Well, yeah, so that's the sixth chapter of my book is on courage. And at the root of the word courage is the French word coeur, which is a word for heart. And so to me, courage is living your life with heart and pouring your heart into all you do and all you express and all that you are in an outer sense. So yeah, the book is, I can proudly and I think authentically say that the book is filled with heart. My heart's in the book. And so there is a certain exposing of my heart in the book. Like people will get to know some of me by reading the book and some of what my life's about and just know where I'm coming from at a heart level. So it took courage to expose that and to share it with, anybody who goes on Amazon who decides to order it can read about all that.
Well, I hear it has very good reviews and you are exposing yourself in a good way.
In a good way.
So, and that's what we want to bring out. So anyone else have any other questions or comments? You can just wave your hand or unmute. Jane, would you like to jump in again?
Well, I was just going to say he's exposing himself in a legal way.
Legal way. That's what we meant to say. That's correct.
Okay. So I was celebrating when I saw what the reviews have been. So that's very wonderful to have that your first time out.
Yeah.
So how long did it take you? This is a work of heart for how long, David?
So I've been working on the book, I'm guessing about 5 years.
Wow.
See, that is so wonderful because, some people just like say, I just sat down and it just came through. And I just gotta go like, oh, be quiet.
And then there's some of us who have to work at it and be courageous
right.
and be vulnerable. Yeah.
And some of us get told, you should be writing a book, but it like you said, it has to want to come out. That you were kind of felt that was pushed, through you, that it really needed to be birthed through you. And so in extended labor, and we accept that. So David, you've been teasing us with, I know that the first chapter, you told us is blessing, and number 6 is courage. So why don't you just go through the different chapters?
Yeah.
And before you do that, let me just tell you a little story. 7 is my favorite number. I was the 7th child born in 7 years. So I like all your 7s. They resonate with me.
Good. So yeah, the first chapter is blessing. The second chapter is understanding. Mm-hmm. So understanding, maybe the longer name for that is understanding of the heart. So it's understanding what's going on in your own emotional experience and then looking upon the emotional experience of others without judgment, but with understanding. Mm. And
passion.
It's a huge factor because if we're judging the world around us or judging ourselves, judging what's happening, we can't actually see and understand what is happening. And we're just seeing our judgment. We're not seeing reality. So that's a huge thing. The third one is about taking action. So if we think about the primary things that we're initiated into in life on our path, taking action is one of them. There are things that don't get activated in the human experience unless we do something. So that's a vital thing, and it has obvious practical benefits to take action, but there are also huge spiritual benefits. Something gets activated physically, a physical energy that's vital through taking action. Next one is purification, which relates to the thymus gland actually, but also, I'm sorry, no, we don't call it purification, we call it fulfilling mission, which does relate to purification, but we each have a mission to fulfill in our life, a destiny, a calling. And it's about taking the essential gift that we have and giving it in the world, manifesting it. So that's the fourth. The fifth is enlightened thinking. So enlightened thinking, enlightened thinking is possibility thinking. And if you can't think possibility, ultimately it's really hard to get through life, because you could spend your whole life just looking at what is and not looking at what could be, not thinking about what could be. And then that takes us to courage. And then the last one is grace. So it's a journey to grace. And grace is this just incredible place of transcendency.
Well, I want to just, congratulate you, because, Bob and I have been coming to the ranch since 2011 or not 2012, something like that. And just to see the evolution of your courses, your offerings, yourself, ourselves, we've changed a little bit, but it's really wonderful. And so when you do the primal, we haven't attended any of the, had the opportunity to attend any of the primal courses, but so when you do that, do you take like the first 2 or 3 of each one of these 7? Because I know one was about grace. That you all did.
So originally there were 4 Primal Spirituality courses, and we attempted to do 2 of the chapters of the book, or the themes of the 2 chapters of the book, in each of the 4 modules, except for the last one, which was devoted entirely to grace. So the thing that we've done this year is that we've split up the first module, which was 4 days altogether, into 2 2-day modules, so that we do blessing in the first 2 days, and then on the next weekend we do the second 2 days, which is understanding, thinking that we give people a more bite-sized piece if it's 2 days and not 4 days.
I'm sorry, were you complete? I just was going to ask you another question. Okay, so one thing that I noticed is I was glad that you picked the thyroid card and you talked about that, because the spirit of life, because in our society there is this like not epidemic, but this really increase in thyroid disease that is happening. And when you think that of the oppression that's in society, that's, I know a lot of it has to be revealed to be healed, but, it just seems that was, I don't know, that card just really spoke to me. And, the need to recognize and to be able to voice authentically, clearly, and with compassion and love. So that, that's why I feel that the theme that Bob and Bob, how many of you are working on this year's?
There's 6 weavers, David, myself, and 4 others.
They're a theme this year about the voice and the voice of co-creation. I just think I also want to say that what you read doesn't feel like a tarot card sort of thing.
No.
It's much more, it's a prayer. It's a prayer.
It's a prayer. And it's so, I don't know how you're going to get all that on a card. It'll be a card like this.
Yeah, so the way we're going to do it is we're going to create a booklet that has the text. And actually, tarot cards are done often in that way, where there's a reading that's in a booklet, and then the card references that reading in the booklet. So they correlate. And we've already done the illustration for the cards. So there'll be an affirmation on the card and an illustration, the number of the card, and the spirit and the sphere on the card.
That was so beautiful. The other thing, one of your chapters was also about taking action.
Yep.
That's always, we're activists. So how do we fit into that schema? And I remember, okay, we're in the lunch line. Well, I'm going to tell a story on you, David. We're in the lunch line one day, and I don't know, Bob and I were talking about something about being a peace activist or something, or we just came from some march or something like that. And then you came up to me and showed me a picture of yourself when you were 16 years old and you were leading a peace rally up there in New England. Fill in the dates there. I just kind of, but I always have a lot of trouble about us being activists, that we're not supposed to be activists, but how do you take action? But anyway, over to you.
Yeah. So
Is that a question?
There might be a question in there.
when I was 16, it was 1969, and I led a march from my high school in Westport, Connecticut, Staples High School, to downtown. And there were 1,200 of the students that left the high school, and then we met with thousands of others in the Central Square. And I gave one of the talks, and it was to protest the Vietnam War. It was the moratorium for the war. That was October 15th of that year. And then November 15th, we got on buses, and there were about 500,000 people that protested in the mall in Washington. So just, I don't know, 5 years ago or something, somebody posted photos of the march, including a photo of me standing at the microphone next to an American flag. So it brought the whole experience back big time. But so you talk about activism.
Yes.
I believe in, I do believe in activism in whatever way is right. And I'll tell you, a seminal experience of that for me was on the Mall in Washington. Pete Seeger was leading everybody in All We Are Saying Is Give Peace a Chance. And somehow I managed to get really close to the stage, and these half 500,000 people, me and my girlfriend at the time. And somewhere into it, I realized that it wasn't a song of protest, that it was a prayer. And you had 500,000 people where it swept over the whole crowd of us, that we just went into this deep state of prayer. And if activism can be prayer, I'm all into it. Yeah, I'm all into it. I think reactionary activism actually weakens you, but proactive activism and prayerful activism is very powerful. Whether it's a march or something like that, or a rally, or whether it's creating a sunrise ranch or a conversion, that's activism. That's activism. It's creating an instrument of expression to bring a new culture into the world and new consciousness into the world, and influencing human consciousness. So we so need that. And then our soul dies if we don't do it, because at least if you're like me and like so many of us, the evolutionary urge is there that's saying, get up off your butt and do something. The world needs you. The world needs your gift, your message, your spirit in the world. So some of us are just called like that, and we can't sit on it. We have to act in whatever ways we're called to act.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. We had that conversation a lot, but I'm going to review this again. I like what you said. So, does anyone else have anything else they'd like to jump in here? I think I'm going to conclude my interrogation. I do have some other points here, but I will talk about the baby being born. We were talking about, you said it was spiritual, and I just had to giggle to myself. I was thinking, that's right, that baby is spiritual. It is not religious, So I was just, that's what we are, containers of spirit. And I want to see if Bex, I'm going to unmute you to see if you have any closing words that you'd like to bring. There you go. And
I am unmuted by host. I guess I just want to close out with thanking David so much for this incredible conversation together. And thank you, Bob and Noel, for having us. And thank you, all of you incredible co-creators online. It's been wonderful being with you all. I can really feel your substance.
Thank you. And Bob?
Thank you. It's wonderful to see so many folks from the ranch with us this evening, our other family. Keahi, great to see you back into the southern land where it's nice and warm from where you've come. And it's been a delightful evening. We really, really have enjoyed this. Look forward to sharing it with all the others through our Facebook page, and it'll be archived on the website within a couple of days as well. We'll send you links to it, so you're welcome to use it in any way that's beneficial to the ranch as well. Thank you so much, David and Bex.
Thank you, everyone, for coming, and it's been a delight, and it's been a real treat because we don't get to talk to you this often, David, that deeply. So,
Yeah.
treat to get all the inside scoop here, and blessings, everyone. We'll see you about mid-April.
We'll see you in mid-April at the ranch, and we'll see all of those that are watching this on June 11th and 12th for the convergence this year. Thank you.
Thank you,